wise a man, it seems there's so much we have lost. We look down the road where all the prodigals have walked, and one by one the enemy has whispered lies and led them off as slaves.
But we know that you are God, yours is the victory.
lot of places in the Word it speaks to us as though we're trees, okay, or we're His planting. And so God has provided everything we need to grow and to, let's go to Genesis 1. You know, when the Lord began speaking things into being, right? Speaking them into being. You could say He commanded them into being. And so when He decided that He was going to make animals and trees and all this stuff, one of the things that He said was, be fruitful and multiply. Okay? What I want to talk to you about today mostly is being fruitful. Because that is what God is looking for. When you plant something, what do you look for? You plant tomato plants, at some point you want a tomato. You plant a tree. Do you know that it takes 100 years for an almond tree to make an almond? So if you plant one, you're not planting it for you. You're planting it for somebody down the road. And aren't you glad somebody thought about you and planted an almond? I just love almonds. I like to blanch them and fry them in oil or bake them in the oven until they get that toasty taste. And I always wonder who the guy was that planted that almond tree for me. And I thank him. And I thank God because He set the whole thing up. Okay? So, in the beginning, God created the heaven and earth. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved or brooded like a hen does over an egg. Okay? He brooded upon the face of the waters. And if you look up that word waters, it's not good words. It's like sewer water. Okay? But a lot of stuff that Larry said today, God straightens it out. He purges it. He cleanses it. He cleans it up. If it's crooked, He straightens it. If it's too big, He cuts it down and uses that to fill in the holes. He just brings everything back into spec, we would say. And so keep going. And God said, let there be light, and there was light. In that word, Nancy brought this out about a month ago. That word let there be is the word become. Become light. Okay? And what I've been speaking to you about for how many years now? I don't know. That word wasn't just electromagnetic radiation. That was God's wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. Okay? Spreading out and making all this stuff. Imagine that. I mean, we think we're so technologically advanced. We're not. We're just discovering stuff God already knew. We're behind the 8 ball. We're way behind Him. Okay? So if man thinks, boy, I'm something because I made a computer, go make some dirt. Go make a rock. Go make a mountain. Go make an ocean. Go make another planet. We're pathetic when it comes to that. But we get a big head and think we're something because we do something. Sorry. Okay? Everything I know I learned from somebody else. Did you learn something last week from Maddie? Oh, yeah. If you didn't, shame on you. Okay? everything you learn, you get bit by bit, piece by piece, and it increases you. Go find, a mustard seed or an acorn or something, and how does that get to be so big? It gets added to. I mean, obviously it gets added to, doesn't it? But it had to receive all that stuff in order to grow. And so, go to the next, please. And God said, oh, we did that one. Okay, he saw that it was good. Let's drop down to where he starts making animals. And plants, anything of that. Go down to 12 and we'll see if we have, okay, what's that one? Okay, that's good right there. The earth brought forth grass and herb yielding seed after his kind. Okay? And trees yielding fruit whose seed was in itself after his kind, and saw that it was good. Everything has its built-in reproduction. Now, when they were arguing the point about whether a conceived person is a living thing or not, the scientists dropped the ball. They should have been up there doing their science thing. They want to be scientists now. Where were they back then? Okay? When I took biology, there was 5 or 6 things that you could tell if something was alive or dead. It takes in food. It gives off waste products. It respires. Not breathes, respires. Everything respires. When you say, well, he's not breathing. Breathing is a mechanical thing to get the chemicals together so you can respire. Okay? So I take in air and I blow out carbon dioxide. How's that happening? Because down in here, that's where it's taking place. In a baby, it goes through its mother's umbilical cord. Okay? It doesn't need to breathe yet until the doctor slaps it, when it's unhooked from the mommy. Okay? But it has an artery that goes into it and a vein that takes everything back out. And so it respires. It's alive. And it reproduces. You say, well, it can't make a baby yet. Everything you look out here, insects, fish, everything, they start out as fry and larvae and worms and different things like that. And they first have to reproduce themselves. Okay? Get to the point where they're become an adult something or other. A nymph or a fly or something goes from a maggot to a fly, or everything grows like that. Okay? And so when you're a baby, your reproduction is to go from one cell to all these. Okay? That's your reproduction. Then when you get born and you grow and you're still reproducing, you're getting taller and everything. Some of us overproduce, but anyway, you get the picture. You grow up and then you get to the point where there's something goes on in your body and now you can make a baby. Okay? Whether you're a girl or a guy, you get the parts to do that. So reproduction is always going on. And when you talk about fruit, you know, when people decided they wanted to eat tomatoes, at first they thought they were poisonous. Some of these ones that you get now in the store seem poisonous to me. When I grow them, I love what I grow. I don't grow that junk with no seeds in it and everything. No seeds means no life. Everything that's seedless does not taste as good as the stuff that has the seed in it. Okay? The seeds are a hassle. Maybe you got to keep spitting them out when you're eating a watermelon. But a watermelon with seeds tastes better than one with no seeds. A tomato with no seeds is like you can throw it up in the air and hit it over the fence with a baseball bat. It's all pulp. There's nothing in it of life. When I go to the store now and see grapes, they're revolting to me. Why? Because I grew up with a grapevine. I know what they're supposed to taste like, and that is not what they're supposed to taste like. They're supposed to be really sweet, and if you've ever drank Welch's white grape juice, it fills your mouth with flavor. That's what a white grape should taste like, and the purple ones too. You don't have to add sugar. You shouldn't have to add sugar to them. My grandpa would grow a grapevine. He would make a cube out of pipes, and he'd interlace them with clothesline that was wide, the metal clothesline with the plastic on it. He'd weave a web, and that thing would grow up and grow out over that. And that was a great thing. If you just grow your grapes on a fence or something like that, the birds can get on the fence and eat them. But when you have it like that, they suspend and they hang down. You have to be a hummingbird to get them now. and so you'd take one of them and put it, the flavor would like explode in your mouth. These ones with no seed in them, nothing. I mean, some people that are used to them think they're great, but they're not. It's like a lot of things. If you knew what it was supposed to be, you'd say yuck. And so the seed is in it to reproduce it. Okay? Jesus had a pure, incorruptible seed. That's what he was. Except a corn of wheat fall in the ground and die, it abides alone. Okay? But if it falls in the ground and dies, it produces much fruit. And what we're trying to reproduce, as far as fruit goes, is him. Okay? We got the seed in us. We produce the fruit and produce more of him. Okay? When we speak to somebody and they come into Christ, you see how it works? And he wants us to produce much fruit. Okay? I'll pick any endeavor in your life, sports, maybe whatever your job is requires a certain skill. Okay? When you started out, you weren't that good at it. Okay? I remember my dad throwing me a ball. You're supposed to catch it, son. Oh, yeah. How do you do that, Dad? Okay? And he teaches you, and you get better at it. And you keep getting better at it. And you want to hit the ball. And so you keep working at it. And the better you get it, you're producing fruit. Okay? Maybe you don't look at it that way, but that's what's going on. You're producing fruit, and you can teach somebody else how to hit the ball. I've taught many kids how to hit the ball. Now, my two sports that I liked was baseball and hockey. Okay? I never was a good skater, so I was a goalie. And really, you need to skate good to be a goalie too, but you don't have to skate fast so much. And I was playing with kids up in Canada. They were born with skates on. But I just kept at it and kept getting better and better and better at it. One day the kids were playing hockey out in the front of my house, and they needed a goalie. They had a goal, and I said, I'll be the goalie. They didn't want me to be the goalie after a while. They couldn't score on me. I was like shooting at a brick wall. And I go, boy, I still got it, You get good at something, and and you have it. As Christians, God wants us to have it. Everything He's got for us, He wants us to have. And get better at it. Some people settle and go, well, I said the prayer of faith and I'm waiting for the bus. Well, the bus ain't coming, folks. Not if you ain't ready. He wants you to have everything that He wants you to be like Him. Okay, what's that entail? Everything. Are we there yet? No. But that's a goal. And that is the thought behind perfection. Not that I never make a mistake or that I'm straight-laced and don't do anything with goody two-shoes, because we ain't that. But He wants us to make us that. The other thing Larry said, I wouldn't be here right now except a nun told me a story about a lady that was caught in adultery. And Jesus said to her, go and sin no more. And I go, what in the world? How do you do that? They told me that I should show up at least once a week, go in this box with a priest and tell him everything bad I did all week, and he's going to forgive me absolution, but I have to show up again next week because I'm going to need some more of that. Well, I would lay there in bed as I was 8 or 9 years old, and I go, why can't I stop being bad? That's what I said to myself. And for years and years and years, I struggled with that until I found out that I could. I just have to plug my power cord into something that had the power to do that. Okay? You all know about me talking about getting a blender and putting ice cubes in and all the stuff you need for a smoothie, and then standing there like a gnocchi, we call it in Italian, and shaking it. Okay? If you ever ate gnocchi, they're little dough balls with potato in them. They're very good tasting with a good sauce on them. But when it's just laying there, that's what it is, a gnocchi. Everything in Italian will call you derogatory. It has to do with food. You can be a gagoots, you can be a salami. Okay? You can be a cooked pear, a panna cotta. Okay? So you can waste your energy and it won't come out right, will it? It won't come out as good as if you plug it in, hit the switch, a couple of seconds, and it's a smoothie. I can't get it to be a smoothie like this. I mean, I could, but you wear yourself out. Christians are wearing themselves out trying to do stuff because they don't plug into the Holy Spirit. And so if you don't plug in, if you wanted to be really good at something, you plug into the person who's teaching you. Okay? Now, they say some of these, like say Michael Jordan, he's so talented, but he can't teach it to you. Well, I don't think that's true. I think he can. He just has to learn how to teach. If you're impatient with a person and saying, can't you do what I do? Well, that's not right. How long did it take you to learn that stuff? You think Michael Jordan was born with wearing Air Jordans and a basketball on his arm? No. He had to learn something too. He just found out he was good at it. You need to find out you're good at it. So the Lord puts you through some stuff. Learning is always a tribulation. Okay? Who wants to go to school tomorrow? Some people do because they've got it in their head. That's where where it's at. But some people don't want to go to school tomorrow. They hope it snows a foot. As long as you don't want to learn or learn how to operate in the kingdom, you'll never make out. You'll always fall short. That's when we talk about stature. Who can by taking anxious thought, can add 1 cubit to your stature? When you were this tall, you wanted to be this tall, right? Could you do it just by wishing it? Could you wake up next morning this much taller? No. You had to go through the process. God's willing to take you through the process and let you learn how to be like him. Zacchaeus was a shrimp, it says. He was small of stature. But it wasn't talking about how tall he was. It's talking about his stature in Christ. As an Israelite, he shouldn't have been doing what he was doing. And his name, Zacchaeus, means pure. That's crazy. Because, was he? No. But that was his potential. All he had to do was hook up with Jesus. And we talked about Bartimaeus, the son of Timaeus. That's what it means. It's like redundant. Bartimaeus, the son of Timaeus. Bar means he's son. That's the Greek equivalent of Ben. And then Timaeus means, you have to look at it in the Hebrew, he was ceremonially unclean to stand before God. And all of us were born with the Adam nature that was ceremonially unclean to stand before God. Okay? That's who we were. He wants to clean us up. That word, the Greek word is catharsis. If you're a nurse or a doctor or so, you hear that word, it's a cleansing process. Okay? Brother from Haiti, Raul. Brother Raul talked one time about hospitals in Haiti. If there's any cleanliness in that hospital or any good food to the patient, it has to come from the family. The hospital doesn't do it. So you go into our hospitals, they stink. And they clean them. If you want to clean up the room, you have to bring, guess what? Hyssop. It's a little low plant. Okay? In the Levitical law, if you wanted to do the red heifer offering, which was for purification, okay, you had to get a red heifer. Couldn't have a white hair on it anywhere. It had to be red. Okay, and they'd check it out. And then there was a cedar had to be thrown in there in the fire, and hyssop. Okay? This is all of this is for purification. Cedar, bugs don't like it, right? Kills them. Hyssop is like a disinfectant. Cedar's the highest kind of tree there is. Big tree. All your sequoias and that are cedars. Hyssop is the lowest form. So you bring in everything who you are. I don't care if you think you're the highest or the lowest. You're going to get put into that purification process. Okay? So, getting back to what we're talking about here, how many of you heard somebody always say, what came first, the chicken or the egg? And if you say the chicken, they go, where'd it come from? Well, it came from an egg. Where'd the egg come from? It came from a chicken. And they go back and forth like that. And they think they're smart because they thought of something. I don't know. I say it's very simple. Read Genesis 1. The chicken came first. And then it was told it could reproduce. Be fruitful and multiply. So the word for be fruitful is para, and it means to bear fruit. And he didn't tell it, maybe you should do that. No, that's how he created it. It's how he made it. It's a commandment. Now go and keep doing this. Keep reproducing. I've given you everything you need to reproduce. So go do it. And multiply. It's my buddy, Rabbah. Okay? It's the word, it also means to be in authority. He gave him authority to do this. You ever get a bottle of Coke or something? The Coke didn't come from Atlanta. They might have sent the syrup up and and the bottling company mixed it up, and then they bottled it, and it'll say bottled under authority of Coca-Cola. Okay? God, on us, it should say we're created by authority of God. Okay? And we have the authority to go out and make more. So we have the authority to go out and speak this word of God, plant seeds into people, somebody waters it, and God gives the increase. And man, I'll tell you, Nancy does probably 80 or more percent, in fact now she probably does even more than that, of a garden work, okay? But I still am amazed when you put a seed in the ground and something pops out. I mean, some people just take it for granted, but I don't. I just go, how'd that happen? You can tell me all the scientific things that we think is going on, but doggone it, what makes that happen? It's a miracle of God. What makes that baby grow? You know, you go into the birthing room and watch a baby come. Holy moly. It's something. So, the thing about producing fruit is its life. And the enemy is going to do everything he can to prevent you from producing life. He doesn't want that. He's for death. Anything he can do to stall you, veer you off, slow you down, any way he can interfere with you producing fruit, he's going to try and pull that off on you. But we have to be not ignorant of his devices. When we see this happening, shut it down. Okay? Sometimes you get in an argument with your spouse, your kids, whoever. Watch it. What's causing it? Sometimes it's something so insignificant it doesn't even need to be talked about. But it's happening and you're arguing with somebody. When you realize that, shut it down as quick as you can. And every time I've done that, it ends up being a good thing. But if you let it go, things can get said that it's hard to take back or that hurt, and you don't want to do that. Because now you're interfering with with them producing fruit. It's not just you, okay? So I want to address some of the things that stop us from producing fruit. Because in the parable of the sower, right, there's like 4 things or 5 that if it lands on by the wayside, the person doesn't receive it, and the birds come and enemy comes and eats it, takes it away. It lands in stony ground. Some people take it and they get all excited, but then the whole thing peters out, and to make sure it peters out, the enemy will bring some tribulation to you, and you'll fold up. Okay? God's trying to make us strong enough not to fold up. Don't let things get to you. Well, that's easy to say. Yeah, it is easy to say. And once you learn how to do it, it's easy to do. It's just that if you're not familiar, or if your faith, how many times did the Lord say to somebody, "O ye of little faith"? The word is oligopistis. Okay, pistis we pretty much know means faith, but oligo is the word for weak. You can have a monarchy, right? Which means you have one person being the leader. You can have anarchy, which means you don't have a leader. There's no law, there's no nothing. Or you can have oligarchy. It means weak. A weak leader that, I ain't going to say it. Sometimes we have weak leaders. And that word oligarchy means neutral or neutered. When you think of something that's neutered, what? Can't reproduce. Okay? So if your faith is neutered, it can't reproduce any fruit. So we need to have a strong faith. How do you make anything strong? I don't care what it is. Exercise it. Move it around. And almost all exercise has to do with some kind of resistance. You want to get on a stationary bike, you can turn the resistance. You want to lift weights, you can put more weight on. Everything you do, you increase. Okay, so, I mean, if somebody said, go pick up 500 pounds, I go, no. Ain't happening. Go pick up 100 pounds. Well, it'd be kind of tough. I might be able to move it. You might be able to pick it up because you're there. But I'd have to start out with like 10. Work up tomorrow to do 20. God's not going to dump on you. It says, there hath no temptation taken you, but such as is common to man. But God is faithful, who will not allow you to, or suffer you to be tempted above that ye are able. That's your word dunamis. But will with the temptation also make a way to escape, that you may be able to bear it. Okay? So, whenever a tribulation comes my way of thinking is, He's not going to put something on me I can't handle. But I'm going to find out that I'm on the edge of not handling it. But if I include Him in, now I plugged into something more powerful. I got a power tool, not a manual thing, not a fleshly thing going. Okay? And so here we go. Now I'm going to overcome something. And I'm going to learn something like Job did. What did he learn? That God is almighty. He was doing everything right. He was going along. He eschewed evil, means he avoided it. But he still had a relationship with God that he knew he was the Almighty. So all through book of Job, El Shaddai, El Shaddai, El Shaddai. When it gets done, he knows what El Shaddai means. And so we need to learn a lot of these things. You know, oh, I'm more than a conqueror because I got him inside of me. Well, then why aren't you conquering? You're not using it. And you're not letting it produce in you fruit. And so it's scary sometimes. You have to admit, he's going to send you down some roads. You haven't been there. They're out of your comfort zone. But he wants it to get in your comfort zone. He sent angels to do certain jobs that he wouldn't have sent them if they didn't know what they were doing. He wants you to know what you're doing. If you've ever been sent out on anything that you didn't know what you were doing, you were scared. But if you knew what you were doing, not so scary, right? You have confidence. That's what one of the words for faith. You have confidence. Be a friend. He wants to be a friend. He was Abraham's friend. Okay? A friend is a different relationship than a servant or a lot of other things. It's somebody you hang around with because you trust them. They trust you. And so, if you go to Genesis 41 in verse 51, we all know the story of Joseph, right? Pretty familiar with it. God gave him a lot of visions. His brothers were jealous. His dad gave him the special coat. Everything about him set him up for somebody to be jealous of him, especially if they're not on the right track with God. So he got sold in, he got his favorite coat ripped off that his dad gave him, threw him in a pit, left him there. Basically, they were going to leave him there and let him die. But Reuben made a faint stab at being a savior. Wasn't very good at it. And so they decided to sell him into slavery. And when he gets to Egypt, they say, this guy is on the ball. Potiphar said, I'm going to put him in charge of my household. And his wife gets designs on him, and he gets made to look like bad, and he gets thrown in prison. But in prison, he gets made the head of the prison. God's people will always rise to the top, like the cream, you know. And then he thought he was getting a break when the baker and the what would the other guy be called? His cupbearer. He told him dreams, and then he sat in there another 2 years until something happened that jogged the guy's memory. Oh yeah, there's a guy in prison, he can tell you your dream. And then all that transpired after that, all of a sudden Joseph's the hero. He saved his whole family. 70 souls came out of a famine into Egypt and lived there for 430 years. And Potiphar, the priest of On, gave him his daughter Asenath for a wife. So he had two boys. Manasseh and Ephraim. Okay? Now, if we can go there. What's that one? Oh, I wanted 41:51. Must have been dyslexic. They gave me one of them handicap things and I keep backing into it because I'm dyslexic. Anyway, Joseph called the name of his firstborn Manasseh. Okay? For God, said he, hath made me forget all my toil in all my father's house. The name Manasseh means forgetting. Okay? Next line. In the name of the second called he Ephraim. For God hath caused me to be fruitful in the land of my affliction. Okay? There's a lot there. Maybe you don't realize it, so I'm going to help you realize it. Ephraim means fruitful, and it means double fruitful. Remember Job got twice as much back? Double fruitful. Okay? If you're going to be fruitful in the kingdom, you can't let stuff like what his brothers did to him tell you what you're going to be the rest of your life. Okay? God put it in his heart. Joseph is a type of Jesus. He put it in his heart to forgive his brothers, or else he'd have let them die. And when Jacob died, they were afraid he was going to now take the opportunity to lower the boom on him. They come and say, oh, our dad said, you're not, don't do that. And he wept. He was so glad that they got saved out of the famine and everything. He didn't care about none of that. Okay? But he said, go back to Manasseh a little bit. He made me forget. Who made him forget? God hath made me forget. Okay? If you're trying to forgive somebody and you can't, bring God into the equation. Because Adam nature wants to get you back. Okay? Tit for tat. I'm looking for my opportunity to lower the boom on you for what you did. You called me a name 20 years ago and you're still bugged about it. So you got to get over these things. And, you can try to forgive and forget, but you got to forget. And I asked the Lord specifically one day when I was praying, I go, how do you forget? You know everything, from the front to the back and everything. How do you say you forgive me and take my sin as far as the east is from the west, and as far as buried in the deep sea? How do you forget? Because I want to. That's what he told me. And so he gives us the desire of our heart, does he not? So if you ask him, you have not because you ask not. We're so stubborn and pig-headed sometimes and proud, too proud to ask. And that's all he says, ask. I got to know that you want it. You ever try to help somebody when they don't want help? Do they like it? No. So when that happens, back off. You just have to. Wait. So he wants the best for you. Now, and he forgot all my father's house. Because even Jacob and his ma didn't believe him when he told him the dream. His dad said, "You mean I'm going to bow down to you too? I'm your dad. I don't do that." Okay, well, we'll see, Dad. Go to Ephraim again. Okay. And the name of the second called he Ephraim, for God hath caused me to be fruitful in the land of my affliction. Okay? You plant a garden or plant anything, if you're a farmer, if all the things happen just right, anybody that wants to could be a farmer. You just got to want to work your tail off. Okay? But if the rain comes at the right time and the sunshine comes at the right time and there's no tornadoes and hail and everything ripping up your crops, no bugs, anybody can be fruitful, right? Yep. Now, what about when those things aren't happening? Can you still be fruitful? When life stinks, can you still be fruitful? Can you still be producing? In fact, when it stinks is the best opportunity to become more fruitful. It's like fertilizer. Okay? You should be learning how to overcome like Job. He got twice as much back. Okay? Where was Jesus born? What town? Bethlehem, Ephrata. Okay? Bethlehem means house of bread, and Ephrata means fruitfulness. Benjamin is the only one of Jacob's sons that was born in the promised land. All the rest were born where Jacob was over in Ur of the Chaldees or wherever, Syria. Benjamin, the son of my right hand, was born in Bethlehem, Ephrata. And he's the only one. Go look it up. I want you to. So he was fruitful in the land of his affliction. Okay? I'm going to skip to something that I didn't want to go to till maybe next week, but Jeremiah, where's he at? 17:7. Just before that it says, "Cursed is the man that trusts in man." In those two words for man, there's two words for it. It's not the same word. The first one is, cursed is a Gaber man or a strong man who trusts in an Adam man. So if you go around trusting in what the world has, you're going to be cursed. And the curse just means it's not going to work out. It's going to work the opposite way. Okay? And that also goes for trusting yourself. Your Adam man, don't trust that thing anymore. Okay? You say, well, it got cut off in baptism. Well, Egypt got cut off from Israel in the Red Sea, but they still kept saying, I wish I had the garlic and the leeks, and over there I had it better. Did you? They were whipping you and telling you to make bricks. Okay? Sometimes we forget the nastiness and just remember the good times. Well, there are no good times. They're all out in the front of you. Joel's army saw a Garden of Eden in front of them. Behind them was a desolate wilderness. So take your rear view mirror and rip it out. That's not you anymore. That's not anything. That's behind you. Okay? And so he goes on and on. If you do that, it tells how you're going to be in a desert place and you're going to suffer. But then the next one is this line. Blessed is the man that trusteth in the Lord, and whose hope the Lord is. Okay? Next line. For he shall be as a tree planted by the waters, that spreadeth out her roots by the river, and shall not see when heat comes. See, the rest of the world is in fear right now. You should not be in fear. You are hooked up to something they're not hooked up to, and you can't blame them for fearing because they're not hooked up to that. Okay? We sent the taproot down, and we're seeking God all day long. And so we're spreading out our roots by the river. Okay? So if it doesn't rain, who cares? I'm hooked up to the river. And shall not see when heat comes. Okay? Tribulation comes, you won't even notice it. Isn't that something, a relief? Would that give you peace? Fruit of the Spirit, peace? Okay? But her leaf shall be green. In other words, you're not going to shrivel up and die just because life's throwing you some curveballs. Okay? You want to be a pro, you learn how to hit the curveball. That's all there is to it. You can't hit the curveball, you'll be down in the minors all your life. And so, but her leaf shall be green, and this is the best part, and shall not be careful, and that doesn't mean you're careless. It means you're not full of care. You're not worried. Your whole life isn't one nail-biting thing after another. Shall not be careful in the year of drought, neither shall cease from yielding fruit. You're going to yield fruit in the worst of conditions because you're hooked up to something that everybody else is not hooked up to. Now, part of your job will be help them hook up. Be merciful, love them enough to say, you know, there's a better life waiting for you. All you got to do is a little flip. That's all it takes. And so, I hope you understand that God's setting us up for success. Yes. Okay? If we're failing, look into it. Find out why. Because you shouldn't be failing. Bartimaeus was failing. He was blind. He was on the highway side. He should have been on the highway. A highway shall be there, a way of holiness. The unclean shall not pass over it. He is unclean. He was everything he shouldn't have been. He was begging. Israelites shouldn't be begging. David said, I have been young and now I'm old, yet have I not seen the righteous forsaken, nor his seed begging bread. There's always room for improvement, isn't there? Yep. When you talk about purging, John talked about the vine. I'm the vine, you're the branches. My Father's the husbandman. He's the seed planter. That's what a husband is, the word means. Plant seeds. He's going to purge. Catharsis. He's going to cleanse. When you take something you don't want, you take something you do want and you use it to push out what you don't want. That's what a purge is. Okay? Some of these dictators do purges, don't they? They do it the wrong way. They push out the good stuff using the bad stuff. Where God wants you to He wants your life to be the opposite. He wants his love, his character, all that he is, pushing out the bad. Okay? John said, he must increase. Yes. I must decrease. Just push it out. Get rid of it until there's not one atom of me left. It's all him. And, you know, he can make life come out of anything. We had a tree once. It was a peach tree, which you don't usually see growing in Michigan much. On the west side you can, because they have that, what they call Mediterranean climate, and warm water coming off of the lakes. They can grow grapes and all kind of stuff. We had this tree, and it just went up, and it didn't have a branch on it. It just went up and curved like this. It looked like a question mark sitting, and it was black. It was all dead. But every year, it would make one peach. It was just something it did. And that tree would basically be straight until that one peach started growing. Then it would start, the weight of it would start bending over. And it was still way up in the air. You'd have to get a ladder. And I would wait every year, because I love peaches. I'll eat a peach before I eat anything else. And that thing would make a huge one peach, but it would be as big as a softball. And I would wait and wait and wait. And that's what it says. The Lord waits for the precious fruit. And that thing would come, and it would start bending down, and I'd get the ladder. And it was one of them A-frame ladders, but it was shaky to climb up there to get it. But I'd go up there and get it. And if anybody tried to get it before me, I would, that was mine. But it would produce, even that dead tree had enough something in it, sap and whatever, to produce one peach. And if all you produce is one peach, you know, some of those things about being fruitful, we'll hit them next week, is some made 30-fold, some made 60-fold, some made 100-fold. And it's not 100%. 100% is a whole of one thing. He's not saying you're going to be a whole of one thing. He says, when you produce that fruit, you're going to produce 30 times, 60 times, 100 times. That's different than 100%, if you understand math. He wants to get 100 people out of you, so to speak, and more. All the numbers in the Bible can be supersized. They don't have to, 144,000 doesn't mean there's only going to be 144,000 people saved. That's going to be his government. It's a governmental number. But you can't have a government if you don't, in a kingdom, if you don't have some people. And so, when he talks about how many times should I forgive my brother? 7 times? No, 70 times 7. Does that mean 490 times? Well, that's the math says that. But when you get to 489, are you going to agree, okay, buddy, wait till you do the next one? No, when he hits 491, you're still on track to forgive him. How many times has God forgiven us? We don't even know how many times he's had to forgive us. Because the Adam nature thinks he's right all the time. So when he's wrong, sometimes we're not even aware of it. And we live our life in tradition a lot of times. I've done this for years and God didn't yell at me, so it must be okay. Well, maybe it ain't. Maybe he's just waiting for you to get to the point where he can talk to you about it. And so next week we're going to talk about Joseph being a fruitful bough. So if you want to look at that, Jacob took all his sons and prophesied over them what was going to be, what they were going to be about. And so he's a fruitful bough that went over a wall. He was planted by a well, like these guys. Okay, so we'll talk about that next week.